Welcome, folks. Thank you for joining us for the latest installment of the Coaches Connect call. I am Coach Jeremy. We have a whole crew of coaches here who are ready to go. And Elizabeth has a question that is locked and loaded. Uh, Elizabeth, I'm going to pass you the mic.
Thank you. So, I just got my certification a few months ago. I have been giving like kind of free sessions to people just to kind of like get some experience. And so, like I just said before, I just signed my first paying client this weekend. But then something I was thinking about, because I feel like all the kind of advice that I've been trying to get or talk to people about and like all the things I've been thinking about is like working for myself. And I was thinking about it the other day and I'm like, I don't really know if that's 100% what I want to do. But I'm like, okay, so if I don't though, like just kind of getting some insight. I don't know if everybody here does all work for themselves, if anybody works with other people or like, just kind of getting some other thoughts or ideas of other options. But also part of me is thinking, okay, well, like if I'm not going to work for myself, like I still feel like I need experience to be working for other people, but it's hard to get the experience. It's like one of those things of like, how do you get your foot in the door without have I guess I do have some experience, so I can't say I don't, but you know what I mean. So just kind of thinking about that, and if everybody does work for themselves, who's on the call, or if there's anybody who doesn't.
Yeah, so it's a good question. So, kind of looking at what are the employment pathways that you can follow here. Do you want to go solo entrepreneur? Do you want to keep it as kind of a contractor? Do you want to be part of a larger team? All of those questions I think are perfectly valid for this format here. So I have some experience kind of in all of the scenarios that you laid out there, but I'm curious to know how other coaches operate here. Uh, Coaches, how do you operate in your own personal business, or how do you see yourself building towards a specific position, if that is something that you have roadmarked in your future? Vicky, I think I see your fingers typing away there, but feel free to unmute and let us know.
I need to be more clever then. I was just going to say that sorry, I work with a couple of coaches, but they're not nutrition coaches.
Mhm.
But they're cycling. That's why I'm not talking here. Excuse me. But having this community is super helpful because it never feels like I'm coaching alone. Like,
Mhm.
this and the Facebook group whenever you have questions. So even if you're working for yourself, you have this huge resource, which is great. Um, that's all I was going to say.
Cool. Sorry, I didn't realize you were working with damaged tools here
I,
today.
I'm not. I'm not. It's just the moment I try to talk and I hadn't talked for a half an hour, it's like, oh, yeah, that thing. It was one of those.
Gotcha. Fair. In terms of the agreement that you have with those coaches, is there kind of like an owner operator of this business? Are you kind of a loose collective of coaches who have a similar skill set, work in a similar niche, and refer clients back and forth? How does that agreement work?
Yeah, so we have a coaching group that they're cyclists.
Mhm.
And so it's mainly cycling. But if they have clients who need some or want some help with their nutrition, and they refer to me, and I work with them on that. And then I've started taking on cycling as well. So I do cycling and nutrition and health. But the name of the company, Elliston Coaching, is because
Mhm.
that's Bill Elliston, and he's been doing this for 35, 40 years. So he's got a good following, and he does all the behind the scenes stuff, which is great for me, right? I don't do any of the billing, I don't do any of the invoicing or the web page, or yeah. So I get to mostly just coach, which I like.
Yeah, that's the dream for a lot of us. We're how can we minimize some of the less enjoyable elements of running a business? The answer there is often finding a like-minded individual, someone who has a larger following, has more connections, and then you work as kind of a subcontractor for them. That's what it sounds like the agreement is here.
Yeah,
Are you kind of like a formalized employee, or do you work as a subcontractor and they send you business and then they take a percentage?
they just take a percentage,
Gotcha.
20%. Um, and it sort of follows my path, my former path as a structural engineer. I managed an office, but it was a remote office from a larger California firm. So they handled all the, taxes and billing, and well, we did the billing, but the infrastructure. So that worked well for me too. A little less pressure, like when things were slow here, they would help out. So same thing when you're working with other coaches, maybe you're really busy and there's a client you have that you can recommend to a coach, um, you know, or vice versa when you're slower and they're too busy and they can say, hey, I've got this client that I think would be great with you, kind of thing. But
Yeah, that's fantastic. So, I mean, it's Elizabeth, that's certainly like one model that you can look towards is finding either a more senior coach who has an established coaching practice, you align with their values, uh, and the methodology that they use with their clients, the messaging that they share online. And then you'll see quite often actually in the PN community, we have the hashtag, it's hashtag job posting. Keep an eye out for those. And then there's
Okay.
normally a few that pop up each week with specific requirements that they're looking for in terms of years of experience. We ask coaches who post those to share quite a detailed list of, hey, here's exactly what I'm looking for: remote position, salary range, paid or unpaid, kind of what is the hours, the commitment, any other additional information or education that they're looking for within that coach. Those are all quite useful. So, and then you can formalize that relationship to becoming an employee where you have like very specific framework to work in, or you can also utilize kind of that subcontractor where it's they're another professional and they just send you folks and they take a percentage of whatever that client pays. Those are all things where you would work out those details with that person. But finding that person, a good place to start would be in the PN coaches community. Just looking for those job posting posts that come up quite regularly.
Yes. Okay. Actually, a few weeks ago, I did see a job posting and I applied to it. And I told my friends, I was like, I got an email saying I didn't get it, but I was like, I was just excited to like actually apply, like get a response. Um, so
Yeah, I mean, by all means,
keep an eye.
if you
Yes.
put in an application, typically they're not getting hundreds of messages from that community just because it's a smaller community. And many coaches are still kind of in the learning process. But I would encourage you to form those relationships with coaches. If they're looking for one coach now, they may be looking for, again, another coach in the future. If you've already raised your hand and say, hey, I'm interested in this, instead of them putting up that post again and having to filter through, you may be someone who becomes on their short list. And you can also ask, based on the candidate that you hired, is there anything that you would have wanted to see from me to be a more appropriate candidate? Showing that it's like, I'm not only interested in this current position, but I want to also improve my skill set to be more attractive later on.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and then if that's something where you're like, yeah, I'm encouraged by that career development pathway, that's something I want to do, great, continue to follow it. If that's something where like, oh yeah, actually those requirements don't align with where I see myself as a coach, we could shake hands and part ways.
Yeah.
Vicky, did you have something you wanted to add?
yeah, I mean, you're bringing up an interesting point too, because one is like if you have a niche clients that you want to work with, you could work with coaches who have that same niche, or you could work with a more general group, and then you would be the client that works with this, and you'd have another coach that works with that, and so to become a more general nutrition group. But
Yeah,
lots of options out there.
that's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, certainly that's a model that I had toyed with initially at the like kind of onset of my coaching business was if I were to assemble kind of a dream team of coaches, uh, who in my network would I reach out to say, hey, I really like the message that you share, uh, but I don't think there's a strong overlap between the client bases that we would have. So if you are someone who I enjoy your message, I think it's valuable, I think we can do good work together to support each other, we can grow our businesses in tandem. But there are certainly people who I think you're a better fit for, and then there's people that I'm a better fit for. If we have that collective bucket, when they come our way, I'm going to send you those ones. The ones who align with me, I'll take those. And that's how we can mutually improve kind of our own businesses. But we'll have like a loose relationship on that front. Uh, Actually, where I met these coaches were all in level two. So I had pretty much an entire year to learn about those coaches. So if you're in one of our PN groups, either for L1 coaches uh, or L2 currently, you'll see and interact with coaches on a very regular basis. I would encourage you to be one of those coaches also who steps forward and shares their ideas. The more you mentioned kind of Elizabeth, like I don't really have that experience, and then upon kind of reflecting a little bit more, you're like, actually, maybe I do have some experience here. Another way to highlight your experience is to become a more recognizable member in this community. So that is something that you may want to take a look at as well in terms of responding to conversations, developing your reputation within this community, and then just being known as someone who puts up their hand and helps others.
Yeah, I like that because I feel like a lot of times I'll like read stuff, but I don't usually like respond. I'll have my ideas or like thoughts, but then I don't know, I don't usually. So that's a good point. And that's something that's like also it's like it doesn't require a big lift. Like I can do that, anytime, anywhere. So that makes sense.
Yeah, give that a try.
Thank you.
Uh, any other business models that coaches are following here? Amanda.
Well, I'm just starting out on trying to do my own thing. Um, so I'm in the process of that. And really just the hardest part I've found is the marketing for me personally and figuring out how to sell myself. Um, I actually have a question if it kind of switches topics, if I could ask it.
Here, I'll pause you for 1 second. If there's anyone else who has something to share with Elizabeth, we'll go with that first, and then we'll come back to you, Amanda. Sound good? Cool. Anna.
Hi, yes. One of the things that my mentor in yoga, Lucas Rockwood, shared with us, and this was an idea he had right before, like late 2019, I think is when he shared it. So that
Excellent
changed a
timing
bit,
for new ventures and ideas.
right? But we're back, we're back. So he suggested hosting a coach party and then having that kind of rotate to different either, outside locations or your own home and inviting people and just having everyone kind of meet and have a networking event, find out whether or not you're aligned or, whether you want to refer people or that kind of thing and just let it become its own thing. Maybe have some intention in the, some specific intentions in the invitation, but let people join in and see how they can help each other out.
This is a great idea and something that like Kate and myself often try and foster these meetups whenever we're in different communities that have larger population centers. So I did one in Mexico City a while ago. We've had some in Toronto before. I know Kate has done some across the US as well. Uh, and for me personally, these events have been very fruitful. The first one I ever went to, I met Kate. Another one that I went to, I met another coach who I ended up working as a subcontractor for him for almost a year or 2 years, something like that. Uh, I would strongly encourage people to just throw up a post, especially if you're in or near a larger population center. Just sharing these ideas tends to be incredibly valuable. You meet people who have like-minded kind of circumstances to you, coaching values as you, uh, and it's one of the best ways that we can network as coaches outside of kind of our online space. So that is very valuable. Thank you for sharing that. Kate, I saw a small wave.
Thank you.
I think one thing I wanted to point out before we move on, I think to Amanda's question, is that when we consider different career directions and different jobs, some are better suited for being an employee and a stable paycheck than others, right? So every single person I know in my life who went to nursing school to become a nurse, they then went on to get their license and then they went on to work at a hospital or a private medical facility with a paycheck and benefits. Same goes for the vast majority of teachers that I know and the vast majority of accountants. Some fields like health coaching or music or art, I'm lumping them all together, they're actually less suited for a stable paycheck and better suited for entrepreneurship. That's not necessarily a good or a bad thing. And I think there are reasons for that. Health coaching is less recognized, it's newer, right? So it's less regulated. And all of those factors play into the fact I'm about to pull numbers out of my butt. They're just my personal estimates. They're not based on any sort of research. Jared can let me know if those numbers feel correct to him. But in my estimate, with health coaches, about 70 to 75% end up self-employed. And then we kind of have these like little splits where 10% might join another coaching practice, like what Vicky has been talking about. Another 10% might end up working as a designated health coach at a local CrossFit box or a gym or a yoga studio or some sort of brick and mortar facility. And then another 5-10% might actually end up working as an employee for a larger nutrition coaching organization. That might be Precision Nutrition, Girls Gone Strong, periodization. What am I thinking of? Renaissance periodization,
RP.
RP, right? Like in similar companies. Like that's sort of my feel for a split. And Jared, how does that feel numbers wise? I totally made those
Yeah,
up.
I think no, it sounds about right. I would say there's probably like another subgroup in there where they get a certification, a nutrition certification, and then continue to utilize it in the same role that they currently are as just an added skill set. So it doesn't become an entire job unto itself. It just jumps, or adds onto the skills that that person already employs regularly. Uh, but yeah, lots of pathways forward here. Kate is correct. The majority will go kind of solo entrepreneur and then create other existing relationships within their communities and networks to foster kind of collaboration with other coaches or with other professionals, and then also have kind of referral networks.
That was helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Hopefully, it gives you some ideas of where you can continue to grow from here, and also that it encourages you to be more of a voice in our larger PN coaches community, especially for folks who have maybe similar questions to you.
Yes, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for getting us started. Amanda, you had a question that you were kind of diving into. Give us a little background info.
Yeah, so I just actually last Monday, I like launched myself and started giving nutrition consultations. I opened my socials, I did everything. And for a little context, I live in Mexico. I'm from the United States. And so my ultimate goal is to actually be online and have an online business. But what I found in my first week is that all of my clients have been in person. And so I chose my niche, which my niche was vegan athletes, because I myself am one. And I'm realizing now that I'm practicing, there's just a complete disconnect between the population of people I'm actually working with, and my niche and what I'm trying to sell myself. And so I'm really curious as to other people's experience and if I should keep pushing my niche in socials or if I should just take it back and really more address the population that is actually looking for me. And yeah, so I wanted to hear other people's experience with that.
Cool. So kind of to summarize here, there was at least two questions that I picked up on. One being that you want to establish your business more online, but initially have had your consultations and initial meetings in person. Is that because I'm curious to know how that happens? Are the folks who are meeting you, are they all common to a same area? Or like, are they at the same gym? Are they at the same office building? How is that happening?
So it's actually been coming from many different social circles. One has been my gym. One has been, I used to be a teacher, so some former teachers have been seeking me out. So it's been multiple different social circles that have sought me out in person.
Gotcha. And these are they formalized coaching sessions? Are these, hey, I want to talk to you about the possibility of coaching and we can meet up and catch up at the same time? How are these sessions kind of structured?
So yes, it's been formal coaching. So
Okay.
they sought me out as wanting a nutrition coach and wanting to help them on their nutrition journey.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, because I don't know if as a professional, I've never had a session where it's like, oh, I have to meet you in person. Unless our relationship has already been like, this is the place that we've always met. So if I was in that person's personal trainer, it makes sense that we'd meet at the gym and just hold that session there. Other than that, every other client has been, here's a Zoom link, and then here's things that I need you to do before, or here's what the discussion will look like. We'll meet at this time. Click on the link when you're ready to join. So I'm curious to know, how are you kind of sharing the structure of those meetings and how are they kind of falling into in-person meetings?
Well, I guess a better way to phrase this is the in-person connections are really just people who have come from my social circles, from where I'm at now. And what I really would like to do is get more online clients and just be able to generate traffic in that way. But I guess how I'm selling myself online hasn't attracted clients yet. It's more just been natural word of mouth things.
Gotcha. Okay.
And
Which is, I mean,
can I ask why? Like, why do you want, like, there feels like this, like, I'm getting people in person and we're working together, but I actually want them to be coming from this direction instead. How come? Like, I'm just thinking, like, so for me, I'm very strongly opinionated on being remote. So I know one of the clients I've taken on this year, we've actually met in person. It was an in-person connection. And then a few months ago, she reached out and she said, I want to work with you. Now, we're still working online, right? And if I met somebody in person tomorrow at my gym and they wanted to work with me, I would consider it, but we would still be working online together because that's just how I work, right? Like, so what's the sticky point here for you?
That's a really great question. I think for me, because
I think the other thing that I see sometimes with coaches, Amanda, and let me know if that resonates a little bit, is, well, people who hire me from my social network don't count as real clients, whether they pay or don't pay. And I want strangers on the internet to hire me because that's how I'll know I made it, sort of like that.
Yeah, I guess for me, it was just how I envisioned selling my business, but maybe I can just be more flexible. I think it just makes me feel confused about my marketing and how I'm selling myself, because my marketing is not targeted towards these populations whatsoever. It's been
Gotcha. Yeah. So, and I think you mentioned this because I think that's the disconnect, right? Like you, I was asking in the chat, you said you defined your niche as working with what kind of athletes?
plant-based athletes.
Plant-based athletes. And then if you're getting these clients, whether they pay or don't pay, but they're like carnivore non-athletes, then there is a bit of a disconnect, right? And you're like, well, these are not really people I want to work with. And I think that might indeed be the disconnect just between messaging, right? And how you show up.
Exactly. So that had me wondering, like, should I just switch my marketing? Because I'm also realizing I enjoy working with people who have no experience with nutrition and just creating the foundations and the basic habits and things like that. Those have been the people who have been seeking me out. That's people wanting to create the new nutritional habits. And
What's more important right now? Is it getting coaching reps under your belt, or is it getting coaching reps under your belt with plant-based athletes specifically?
I think just getting coaching under my belt.
Then you just answered your question.
Thank you. Great.
Your kind of secondary question there also, should I change my messaging? Uh, you mentioned you kind of like launched within the last month. If you have resources that you've already pulled up, it's probably a maybe, but not yet. Like you're getting people coming through your door. You're satisfying that initial requirement, which is get those coaching reps. You're also learning more about the people who are working with you. And that, oh, maybe I can broaden this a little bit and it's still quite satisfying for me. So for the time being, nothing needs to change if you're satisfying that initial requirement, but you can change it at any given time if you feel like I can serve more people, and this doesn't feel distasteful or not in alignment with what I want to do. So for right now, it's sunshine all around, it sounds like. Maybe still working on figuring out what the difference between kind of conducting coaching online versus in person is. Uh, if people really want the in-person service, you'll have to decide, is that something I want to continue? Do I charge differently for that? Versus do I want to move all my sessions to online? And I see in the chat box as well that I believe there's Maureen mentioned that they're also working quite in person right now and want to move more to an online setting. There are certain demographics and populations where this is going to work really well. Some of them you may have more challenges. As someone who's worked with a lot of older adults, uh, didn't actually find too many issues working in an online setting. It's just that we had to move from Zoom to a phone call, which, I mean, losing my face didn't really impact the coaching relationship that strongly, and a lot of folks were perfectly fine with doing just phone calls. So navigate that tech space accordingly, and you can be still very effective in that front. Amanda, thank you for bringing up your question. Did we answer it effectively? Did you have any more follow-up questions?
I think you guys really helped me reflect on my goals right now. So thank you so much for those beautiful questions. I didn't see your name, Katarina. Thank you for that. I guess my only doubt I'm wondering about now is marketing. Is like, do I continue the vegan athlete route, or do I switch and go like how to love your life through nutrition and just focus on just general habits and how to love your life? I think I might have to do some exploring on my own for figuring that out.
Yeah, I mean, I think at this point, it's probably a question mark, maybe, seeing as currently things are unfolding in a way that you thought, or in a way that was slightly unexpected, but not undesirable, and not kind of like, no, this is hard pass. I don't want to work with these people. So we'll see how that unfolds. But Cindy, you have your hand up.
Hi, can you hear me?
All
Okay.
good.
So I just wanted to share my experience because I think it might be helpful in this context. I initially started out, I started a consulting business where I helped cancer navigation. So I help cancer patients navigate through their treatment and survivorship. So I got my nutrition coaching certification because I found that there was a need for the cancer patients' family members and friends and people around them to, kind of be more proactive with their health in terms of prevention and keeping themselves healthy. And so I got my certification, and I now ended up having to do transition, and I'm actually getting a lot more health coaching clients than I am cancer navigation clients. And it really just opened up a lot of possibilities for me. So it took mentally just a switch to open up my mind and not just be so attached to my niche or what, marketing should look like. Because quite honestly, your best practice is going to be, or the best process for this is get clients, whether you want to practice with them or they're paying clients. The whole goal is to refine your practice to a point that you essentially should be able to help many people, right? Like it's not just going to be your ideal client. They might be talking to somebody that's dealing with something totally different, but your process will still work for them. So it kind of depends on, what your goal is. For me, it was just to help people get healthy, whether they're in cancer or they've, had their father pass away from cancer. They just want to get healthier. And so now it feels great, even though it's totally opposite of what I envisioned in the beginning. It's good to see that I can really apply it to anybody as long as you just want to help them.
That is very useful additional feedback. And the thing I'll take from that is that it's really a luxury to be in a position where it's like I'm getting too many of the wrong people, where my business is just so overflowing that I have people that it's like I need to actively turn them away because they don't fit in kind of the parameters that I've established for what an ideal client is. If we get to that problem, it'll be a great day. But for right now, it sounds like you may be changing some of those parameters a little bit to work with the people who are showing up. So that's awesome. Any final thoughts for Amanda before we move on? And when we move on, actually, Vicky, there was a conversation that you and I were supposed to have last week. I would love to get an update on fueling for your cyclist. But any additional thoughts for Amanda? Nope, looks like we're all good. I'll give kind of what I remember from our previous conversation, Vicky. You were mentioning that you had a younger male cyclist, I believe, who was, as all cyclists and endurance athletes are looking to increase their power output, get stronger on the bike, but was also kind of conscious of weight gain that may hamper their performance and potentially any health concerns regarding specifically the use of gels or carbohydrate-based products that are common in endurance sports. The good news is it sounds like Tony's pretty jazzed up to have this conversation as well, and I know Kate has a good deal of experience here. So I think you had an update for us based on our conversation we were supposed to have last week.
So this is where our worlds collide, Jeremy, because I think some that was in the PN coaching group. Yeah. So the talk that we had with the group that day was super helpful, and I've and then we had a lesson in the PN coaching group, which was talking about, people who think they eat nutrition foods or workout foods because they're healthy. And then there's that question, are they really? So that lesson in the PN group was really spot on for me. Gave me some kind of leaning me towards my perspective too, because I'm working with a couple clients now and it's off season for many of them. So just trying to get them to eat a little bit more whole foods rather than, I mean, you don't want to sit on your couch and eat gels, and we get in that habit, right? Like we want a little energy. Oh, there's some gels, I'll eat those. And yeah, so just trying to circumvent that, like eat whole foods when you can, when it's not performance enhancing, and 100% sugars are performance enhancing. The science is no brainer there, but just for life and for health, eating whole foods, less processed foods is always a good path when you can. I don't know.
Cool.
Is that what you're? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was the conversation that we were meant to have. And for folks who have never been in PN coaching before, during our 2 week period where we explore carbohydrate intake, there's one lesson that focuses a little bit more heavily on products that are marketed towards athletes. So there's an image that we show there is like a Gatorade bottle knocking out a bottle of water. It says Gatorade always wins. It's very violent, very graphic, but drives the point home. Uh, Part of the conversation that we also have there is that there are certain foods that have a health halo to them. Either that they're performance enhancing, they're more healthful than their very similar nutritionally dense counterparts. And we just ask folks to kind of pull back on some of those labels and then look under the hood and understand what actually makes sense in the context of their goals and their daily needs. As Vicky said, yeah, we don't want to develop an athlete where it's like this is clearly the superior food, and then they don't have the context for that. So it's like, well, whenever I'm a little bit tired, I'll just like pop caffeine pills, or I'll have a gel to start my day because that is clearly the best way to consume food. I don't know if anyone remembers the Simpsons episode where Homer becomes a bodybuilder and realizes that every food is more powerful in bar form. That is not the message that we want to send to our clients. So it may be something for folks here to consider as well. If you're not on a loadout on a bike and you're considering what is the most energy dense version of this food that has the lightest weight and delivers the most calories per unit, sometimes a banana is just fine.
And it brought back a memory of a call or one of these calls that we had probably 2 years ago with one of my first clients, and we made jokes, or maybe I made the joke of her being the queen of nutrition vending machines, because she was off season, and when she went through this list, like it was a bar for breakfast, a bar for lunch, a bar for a snack, like so many bars. Yeah, so trying to get her to embrace whole less minimally processed foods, yeah, was quite a challenge.
Yeah, and I think the larger conversation there often revolves around optimization. And we as a society are pretty driven to try and optimize every process, uh, nutrition included. If anyone has ever seen the product Soylent, which had a real moment in Silicon Valley with tech bros, where it was like instead of sitting down and enjoying a meal, you could just put 2 scoops of this in water and then drink this nutrient slurry, and it will give you all the vitamins and minerals and macronutrients you can need so you can continue to code more efficiently and keep making those big bucks. And it is kind of at that crossroads where like maybe we pull back a little bit and understand that taking 15 to 20 minutes to eat lunch is not uh, is not an insult to productivity in our modern way of living. It is actually something that is very key to the human experience. Uh, and if you do 100 or 200 lines less of code this afternoon, I think the world will be okay. Nutrition should not be determined by shareholder value. Kate, while you're here, you did a super cool thing this week. Do you want to give us a quick rundown?
of nutrition strategy?
Yeah, actually, I am kind of interested in that and how you optimized for it, but you can go more broad picture in terms of the cool thing you did.
I was hiking with my father, so optimize is a strong word here. We're just trying to survive, if I'm completely honest, trying to survive the family dynamics. So we did a rim to rim hike in Grand Canyon, which is essentially hiking from one rim to another. You start at one end, you go all the way down and traverse and then up. So it was 26 miles, and that was on my bucket list for a while and on my father's bucket list for a while as well. My baby brother joined, a couple of my running partners have joined. My father is 62. Um, Not really an athlete. He's a relatively fit guy, so he's done some completely flat ground hiking as preparation for this. But we were planning for nutrition, and I know my concern with my team. I trusted my little brother to take care of himself since he's kind of an outdoors man living in Yukon and hunting moose. So I was pretty confident that he could support his own nutrition for 10 plus hours. I I knew it was going to take us probably 10 to 12 hours to do it. It ended up taking 15. So we started in the dark and we finished in the dark. It was 4:30 a.m. to I think about 7:30 p.m. A couple of reasons. It was 106 degrees Fahrenheit down in the box. So that was really hot. We did take a couple of detours, which took a couple of hours off. There were scenic detours. And then some of us were really struggling on the uphill, and the uphill was long. So really slowed down there. But think of kind of how, for those of you who maybe have not done something that long, like how would you go about planning for nutrition for that long? Because it is completely self-supported, so there are no like aid stations halfway through. And I joked along the way. I was like, next time, if anyone wonders what the heck you're paying for when you're running a race, just remember all those aid stations with conveniently placed Gatorade every few miles, right? Like, meanwhile, I'm carrying, a winter jacket, sunglasses, sunscreen, snacks, band-aids, like everything you can think of, like on your back for all those hours. So I was planning for about 12 hours of nutrition, and I was planning for about half of the nutrition that I would usually plan for if I was running. So if I was running a longer event, I would usually aim for at least 200 calories of mostly carbs per hour. Here I was aiming for about 100, knowing that the effort will be lower and the heart rate will be lower. So we're kind of hanging out in zones 1 to 3 most of the time, and we're not really running and we're not really jostling up and down, right? Like, it is much easier to eat on the go. Um, my dad was in shock when I told him how much food to bring. He said he was planning to bring some snacks, which terrified me a little bit. And so we had a mandatory like food intake once an hour by the clock. Um, Vicky's saying palate fatigue is real and variety is key. Yeah, and that was one of the big things for sure, is bringing a different kinds of flavors, textures, like so some sweet, some salty, some crunchy, to really just down the calories. Maureen was saying I would get fat adapted prior to leaving. No way. I'm an endurance athlete. There's no way I'm getting fat adapted. And look at Vicky. She's like, no way. No, carbs are king. I will die on this hill. But yeah, Jared, does that help, or anyone else? If anyone is curious, has ever done anything like that, like long hikes, longer races, let me know.
I mean, as someone who enjoys just wandering through like the outdoor adventure stores, like I'll never need a jet boil stove, I don't think, but have I spent an odd amount of time looking at the various models? You bet your ass I have. Uh, it's always very interesting to me whenever I hear about people doing like longer treks or anything like that. The first question I always ask is like, I wonder how they feel for that. Like, what are the considerations? Kind of like weight, I assume, is one. Hydration is another one, and energy density. This is kind of on the flip side of the conversation we just had with Vicky, where we're trying to get people to normalize just eat regular food and you'll be fine. But in those more extreme conditions, yeah, there's definitely times where we have to be a little bit more judicious in terms of what makes the cut, especially if I have to carry this through extreme heat for extremely long durations. Uh, and then I was mentioning to you the other day, Kate, that I'm looking to do the Inca Trail. So some of that is a consideration. If you have a way of uh, extracting more oxygen from the surrounding atmosphere, I think that's probably going to be the biggest limiting factor to my overall pace. But I'm not looking to run it. And again, survival is very high on the top of my list.
Well, the good news, Jeremy, that you're not allowed to trek Inca Trail by yourself. So you're
Yes, you
actually
have to have
will
you have to
absolutely
have a guide.
paying for people to carry your food and gear, which simplifies logistics quite a bit for sure.
Certainly.
Tony saying, I rode my bike from Canada to Mexico and done 7 Ironmans. There you go. Well, see, then Tony's well familiar with some of the endurance stuff that we're talking about. And I would find that, like, I find that in endurance and longer events, there is obviously a bit of a split where you have like, I don't know, let's say like roadies, where you have road runners, road cyclists, that if you were to do events, aid stations are pretty common. I actually don't know, Tony, are there aid stations in Ironman? I'm assuming kind of similar.
Yeah, yeah, a lot of aid stations. Yeah, you need a need a lot of support because it can go anywhere from 11, 12 to like 17 hours. So you're in that window of like, let's just try to live.
You find like, so you would carry some water hydration fuel on you, and then you would also use aid stations. Would you rely on aid stations completely? How would you approach it?
No, for myself and for my athletes, we practice whatever we're gonna be, what's on the race course. So we look up, hey, what's gonna be on the race course? How's your stomach handling all these? And then can you get used to using the same substance over and over? Because
Yeah.
that fatigue is definitely real. So you practice for that stuff. And what I found the hardest part is to stick to that plan because you have to eat and drink water, drink Gatorade when you're not actually thirsty. But
Yes.
you fall behind that stuff, you just won't catch up. It's be a long, long, long day.
Well, and this is actually, Vicky and I had a conversation about it because food intake and fueling is actually a skill, right? Like
Hmm.
it's something that you practice. And very similarly, like we talk about the discomfort that we kind of have to lean into and embrace if we're working on weight loss. There is a flip side to that discomfort, as the hard gainers will know. If you're working on gaining weight and gaining muscle, it's actually quite uncomfortable as well because you have to lean into eating more than you want and often having that like uncomfortable fullness of eating enough. Similarly, there is that skill of fueling during endurance events where you might experience, like, you're not feeling hunger, you're eating by the clock, you kind of force it down sometimes. And there is even could be some like mild GI distress
Yeah.
that is relatively normal, right? Like that is just like a trade-off of fueling during an event. Like we obviously don't want to experience anything acute that would interfere with performance. But, as my father during the hike was saying, his like, it doesn't taste good to me anymore. And I'm like, dude, we're not at a restaurant. Like that is not, I don't care. Right? Like no one's enjoying this. Like we're just like this is just part of the course. Like that's what you do. So what I was saying is that there is the kind of like the road more supported sports where we will have some support along the way, but then we will also have a split into through hiking, outdoor hiking, endurance running, ultra running, more in the wilderness where there is no support. And that's where weight can really come into consideration. So I know my brother who does some of this stuff out in Yukon, there is a whole like minimalist packing hiking community where it's like I think the rule that he shared with me that I loved because I'm not in those circles, right? Like it's all like the little subcultures. He was saying like the golden rule is what was he saying? It's 100 to 1, where the foods you really want to bring with you on a hike are calorie dense enough that have at least 100 calories for every 1 ounce, right? Like otherwise you're just wasting weight and space, right? Like so kind of consider what are some of the things that are like nutrient dense, calorie dense. I know he relies a lot on like the prepped, not the prepped meals, but like those meals you just put hot water in
Oh,
that
the
are like
dehydrated meals.
dehydrated meals that are ultra light for dinners, and then like it's oatmeal with dehydrated fruit for breakfast, and like maybe well, not really a sandwich because that doesn't keep for more than a day, but something like a bar or pretzel mix for like some nuts for lunch. That was kind of cool to see.
One of my former military clients shared this gem with me. His saying was, ounces equal pounds and pounds equal pain.
Nice.
I was like, yep, I don't know when I'm going to get to apply that to something, maybe on the Inca Trail, but uh, that is something that I'll keep in mind as well. And it sounds like you definitely took that to heart for this trek.
Well, it was very fascinating to see the range because we saw folks on trail. It was very busy. We saw folks on trail with 118-liter backpacks that were hiking down with like tents and pads, right? Like, and chairs because they wanted to spend time down there. They
Oh, gotcha, gotcha.
had a permit to camp, right? And we also were passed by runners wearing like a sports bra and like a little water bottle, right? Like as well, because they were not going to spend 15 hours down in the canyon. So they, of course, needed significantly less, like water, less fuel, less.
Mhm. Makes sense. Cool. Uh, Always fun to talk about nutrition at both ends of the extreme there. Uh, but yeah, that seems like a good place to wrap it up for today. Thank you, folks, for sharing your questions, for sharing your experiences with us. And then, Kate, I believe you have the next Coaches Connect call. Is it you riding solo
I don't know yet. It's going to be at least solo or maybe solo and someone else.
and friends? Hopefully. All right. Awesome, guys. Thank you for joining today. Have a great one.
Thank you.